Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TimeformUS Pacecast. This is the September 10th edition. I'm Craig Mulkowski, the Chief Speed Figure Maker for TimeformUS, and I'm joined this week by a friend of mine from the San Antonio area, Bobby Shoemaker. Bobby is a person I've never actually met in person, but we've talked quite a bit. He's a big contest player. And I thought the races we're going to cover today would be right in his wheelhouse. We're going to talk about races 8 through 10 at Kentucky Downs. It's a little bit abbreviated version of the show on this week. It's a kind of a short week in racing. A lot of the big circuits aren't running this week with Del Mar and Saratoga closing. And as a contest player, I know Bobby's a guy who's constantly searching for prices. And I know that's really what we want to do here at Kentucky Downs, I believe. We have similar playing styles in that. Me as a pari-mutuel player, Bobby as a contest player. Bobby, let's jump right in and start with race 8 at Kentucky Downs. It is the turf sprint, the FanDuel turf sprint. It's a grade 3 with a humongous purse, $1 million purse, which has become kind of a thing at Kentucky Downs with these huge purses for everything from maiden races all the way through these stakes. And how would you start dissecting a race like this?
I mean, Craig, I appreciate the opportunity, first of all. Thank you so much. I want a horse that's going to be forward in a sprint race like this. And that's where I land on Infamous. The 5 furlong, 58 4/5 work last time out really, kind of tells me that this horse is ready to run. I mean, this horse has run well at this racetrack before in which he won. And I get the best jockey, in my opinion, in the world. And second off the layoff, I mean, 6-1 on Irad Ortiz. I mean, Craig, can you do better than that?
I actually went a little bit different direction, and it's not because I don't think Imprimis is going to run well. I do. As you said, he's run well over the track before. It's something that I think is really important at Kentucky Downs. Horses tend to win over and over again here that have, or at least run well over and over. It's such a unique track. The horse I went with is the one that actually beat him last time, and that's Fast Boat. But for very similar reasons. He's run well over this surface before, and he gets the one jockey that I think is a rival to Irad, particularly in these turf sprints. It's really a specialty for him. He's been killing it at this Kentucky Downs meet, and that's Joel Rosario. So he's just a little longer price if I play exactas, which I often do. I mention often on the forecast that I'm a guy who likes to play vertical bets and play individual races as opposed to horizontal bets because, I like prices and it's hard to string 4 or 5 of those in a row together. So no problem with your selection at all, but I just prefer Fast Boat a little bit more. I like the inside post position. He'll be able to save ground a little bit easier. And just that Joel Rosario finish at a price was a little too much for me to resist. It is a big field here.
Sorry.
We have yeah, go ahead.
You're not going to get Joel Rosario and Joe Sharp at 10-1 very often at all. So.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the morning line. I suspect he'll get bet down a little off of that. A couple other horses I did want to talk about in here. It's a big field of 12, of course, with an AE, so even if somebody scratches, it'll still be big. And the morning line favorite at 7-2 is Casa Creed. He's a horse who seems like he'd be a perfect fit here at Kentucky Downs. Based on his running style, he's had success at longer distances of a mile. How did you view him in here?
I mean, I just think the horse from a value play perspective, Craig, is just not something I want to do. I'm not a big fan of Alvarado at all. And I just feel like these jockey trainer connections are not something I want to play at 7-2. So not a fan there.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it certainly wouldn't shock me if he won the race, but as you said, I don't think he's going to offer any value at all. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the 6-year-old mare Got Stormy in here. She is the second 9-2 second choice on the morning line. She
Yeah.
has won here. She won a race last year, I believe it was. She won the ladies sprint at a little bit longer distance of 6.5 furlongs.
Yeah.
How do you view her chances in here?
I mean, she has certainly exceeded my expectations. And I love Tyler, and I'm a big fan of Mark Cassey on the turf. So, I mean, she's working out like a monster, right, Craig? So, I mean, if you give me 9-2, I'm certainly willing to consider. But anything below that, I'm going to pass.
Yeah, and I'd actually be surprised just because of her name if you did get that 9-2.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I have reservations just because I do really think people might overrate that race last time, the Grade 1 4-star Dave, where she beat Males for I believe the second time in that race. But it's just a race where for whatever reason she really seems to love that Saratoga course. The I guess it's the tight turns, that inner turf, and just seems to run her best races there. Before those Saratoga races, she had kind of regressed on our TimeformUS speed figure. So I personally don't think she offers much value. Just a little aside before we move on to the next race, something I'm not very good at and don't pay a lot of attention to, but you've mentioned twice now, is the workouts. Is that something is a big part of your handicapping?
It is, especially in sprint races. I mean, I want horses that show me that they're going to be fast out of the gate. And, if I get a 6 furlong race or 5.5 furlong race and I get 5 furlongs in 101, I'm not interested. I'm just not. So if you give me, 4 furlongs and 47 and flat, Craig, I'm certainly interested in that because again, as I alluded to earlier, I want to be forward in sprint races.
Now,
And
do you watch workouts on, a lot of them are available on an XBTV or?
much, yes. I watch a lot of workouts. I want to see how horses are working out of the gate. So yes, that is a big part of my game.
Good to know. It's an underused tool for me in TimeformUS because it's probably the only place I know of where you can see every workout a horse has had in his entire life at the click of a button. So
Your solution's the best in the business. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I had nothing to do with the workouts, but it's available, so I'm glad it's there. It's one of those things where I do like the lifetime workouts. You can see where the race is mixed in. You can even our PPs. You see the whole lifetime performances. That's like Fast Boat, who I picked in this race. I think I had to go back to 2018 when he ran at this track, so that's not going to be in a lot of people's PPs. Oh no, that's actually Channel Cat in the next race, which we'll get to, who hadn't run there, but he won there in 2018. A lot of people aren't going to see that. So that's it. I kind of foreshadowed the Grade 2 Calumet Cup. It's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. It's going to be 1.5 miles on the turf for older horses. And again, like all these races, a full field of 12. This one has 4 also eligible, so almost a guaranteed 12 horses. And where did you land in here?
Craig, I went with Channel Cat, as you just alluded to. So, as I told Steve Vick this morning, I don't think there's a better front end rider in this country than Johnny V. And I think Channel Cat is lone speed. So I'll roll the dice there.
Well, I got no problem with Channel Cat. I was very close to making him my top selection. I did not. He'd be my second pick in here. The one horse that really scares me a little bit is a horse just to his outside, Tide of the Sea. Yeah. He's a horse who's been up on the pace 3 of the last 4 times. All 3 of those times had some red fractions. So I'm not confident in basically my own pace projector in here that the Channel Cat's going to be as lone as the pace projector would indicate. Did you have any issues with Tail of the Sea, or do you just think he's a quicker horse, Channel Cat?
I just think Channel Cat's going to be faster, Craig, out of the gate. And I mean, I get your pick. I mean, Mike Maker, Luis Saez. I mean, you can't you can't be better than that. But I'm going to trust Johnny B on the front end.
Oh, don't get me wrong. He's not my pick. I'm just saying he's the reason I didn't pick Channel Cat.
Okay.
Because I think he could very well challenge him early, given that, like I said, he's gone pretty fast at shorter distances, at longer distances. And the one race where he was just didn't run at all was over a yielding turf course. Didn't show much speed going 2 miles. So I'm kind of putting a line through that one. So he scared me just a little bit in that one. But like I said, I fully respect Channel Cat. I do think he's a horse that really does need the lead. I think the trainer has finally figured that out, Jack Sisterson. All his best efforts come that way. And that kind of led him to getting in that big speed duel in the Bowling Green last time out, where I believe he was Tribhuvan was in that same race. And They both seemed pretty intent. And he was fast enough to outrun him. So he's obviously got a high cruising speed.
Well, I'm afraid that you're going to go with Arklow here. And I'm just not a fan. I'm not going to play horses that are that far back on the turf. I just think the way he runs, and from a trip perspective, I'm just going to try to beat him. And 3-1, Craig, and we know he's going to be below that. So I'm just going to pass.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Arklow, but he is no way my pick. I would never bet a 3-1 shot at Kentucky Downs, to be honest. It just. Right. It's just such, these races are so wide open. I haven't been impressed with Arklow. I did pick him last time at Del Mar, and he just did no running whatsoever until very late. So I'm not interested in him at the short price. The horse I landed on, and don't get me wrong, he's not as likely a winner as Channel Cat, but I think he offers some more value, and that's the horse on the inside, Emperador. He's a horse who I think's been in really good form. He hasn't won a race yet since coming to the U.S. from, I believe it was Argentina, but he's run a pretty decent race every time out, and I think he's got a little bit of hidden form in here. His race 2 back in the Louisville, his first time trying the longer 1.5 mile distances here in the States. He was up close to what was a pretty quick pace early, and I think it doomed him. He was run down late. It was a race Arklow and Red Knight won, 2 horses with absolutely no speed. And I just think he was too close, moved a little bit too early, and had nothing left. And then last time out in that United Nations at Monmouth Park, at Grade 1, he lost to Tribhuvan, who I mentioned earlier, had dueled with Channel Cat. But in that race, he was left all alone on the front end, had things his own way. And Emperador was getting to him late. He was actually making up some pretty good ground. And I just think at his 15-1 morning line, he's the kind of horse I'm going to try to build my ticket around. Hope he runs 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to take a shot with Emperador.
Certainly respect that, Craig. I mean, that's a great pick. I'm not a big fan of Joe Talamo, but this horse is certainly primed on a good effort. So I certainly respect that pick.
Now, one thing I want to mention, you do seem to talk jockeys a lot more than I do. Right. Is that something, is jockeys a big part of your handicapping? Is it more so on turf than on dirt? I know personally that's how I view it. I definitely pay more attention to jockeys on turf races, but especially routes, than I do in dirt races.
Without question, Craig. I mean, I love Irad, Flavian Pratt. On dirt, I love Ron Santana because I know he wants to be up front, right? So you get my sense of handicapping, right? I want to be forward all the time. So I'm looking for jockeys that have that sense in their mind, and I want to be forward because trips mean everything to me. So that's why I play horses that I think are going to be forward, and that's why I respect Johnny V so much. Because
now I was going to ask, doesn't that conflict a little bit with your admiration for Irad Ortiz? Because he is a guy who doesn't particularly like to be forward, I would say. That's my opinion. Do you differ on that, or is he somebody who's just so good at what he does you're able to get past that?
Greg, how good is he? I mean, come on. Right. He's not a forward guy, but he's so talented, just so talented. And you can't dismiss that kind of talent. You just can't.
No, I agree. I think we saw him pay some big prices towards the end of Saratoga in turf routes, and
Right.
it was just unbelievable to me that he would ever go off those kind of prices. But
Right.
it is an interesting conversation to have because as much as I appreciate Irad and what a great rider he is, when I see him on a speed horse in a dirt sprint, I want no parts of him. That is something we hope to add to Timeform US one of these days, jockey stats like we do trainers that are broken down more specifically than your typical win percentage ROI. So hopefully that's something that's coming soon. I know it's in the works, and I would imagine that would be something you'd appreciate as well.
Oh, I would love that, Craig. You're the best.
But yeah, it's been in the works for a while. I'm not involved in it. Some other people are. COVID kind of set us back a little bit as it did
Right.
most of the world. So, but they are coming. I can promise you that.
Okay, good.
That said, one more race to cover here on this Timeform US forecast. And this one, we're going to go back to one turn. It's a 6.5 furlongs. And I say that with air quotes. It's something I should have mentioned earlier. These races are a lot longer than 6.5 furlongs. You can check the run-ups in the chart. They're well into the 300, approaching 400 feet. So this is definitely I would say a 7 furlong race, unless the rail is moved and it changes things. So that is something to keep an eye on. But the races they've been running are much longer. You throw in the nature of the course, and these are not what I would call true sprint races. How do you view those, Bobby?
I mean, this is a very intricate chart course, to say the least. So, I mean, I would judge 6.5 furlong races at Kentucky Downs more like 7 furlong races. So, with that being said, I'm a big fan of Into the Sunrise with Leslie Ward and Irad Ortiz. I mean, when do you get Irad and Wesley, Craig, at 12-1? I mean, we're talking about connections in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Sprint last year that went off at 3-5, drawing the 14 hole. Get the one post, get the rail. I know Irad's going to go. Craig, I mean, that's a big number to me. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Into Sunrise, he's certainly a horse I have as a contender in the race. I am a little leery because, as you said, it is Irad, and this is a speed horse. And I don't necessarily think that he is the kind that's going to bust them out of the gate. But on the other hand, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing at Kentucky Downs. I don't think this horse has proven to be a totally need the lead horse, though all his best races have come on the lead. But Irad Ortiz has done that before where he's turned him around. So I'm certainly not going to knock anyone taking those connections at a longer 12-1 price. For me, this was just such an evenly matched race. When you look at our preview page, I think every single horse in there has a spotlight figure of 101 to 111. They're all triple digits. Nobody really has a standout figure. The spotlight numbers, I'm not going to exaggerate. They're not something I use in my picks. I know they're used for the power picks, but I just kind of look at the field to get a rough gauge of how competitive a race it's going to be. And as I scroll down a little bit, I see a couple horses have 99 down towards the outside, but just that quick glance tells me it's a wide open race, and there's no way that I'm taking any kind of short price in here. I believe the morning line favorite is Bill Mott, has Annex at 9-2. No, Point by Me at 7-2. And he's got some of the lowest figures in the field. He won a Group 1 secretary, or the Bruce D Stakes this year, former Secretariat Stakes last time. But with only a 104 Timeform US speed figure, that was a Group 1 in name only. I don't even know if it was a Grade 3 quality this year. Kind of sad to see Arlington go out on that note, if indeed they're going out. I guess there's some hope maybe they won't be, but I'm not impressed by him. Annex is a horse who started out his career like he could be any kind, but he never really developed very much. He did run second in the Hall of Fame last time. The 111 puts him right in the mix, but again, I'm not looking for a horse that's going to be a short price in here. So I'm actually going for a longer price, and in this case, I'm going to the other sex. I'm going with a 3-year-old filly, and that's Miss Amulet. she's a horse who we've only seen here once in the States. She came over, ran in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Philly Turf behind Aunt Pearl that day. She ran a good third, beating only 2 lengths. She went back overseas, hasn't done much at all. She's been buried in her 2 starts. But I just like the placement here. I think she's going to fit well. That 110 that she ran in November as a 2-year-old would fit very well in this field. And with any progression whatsoever, she's a horse who would actually kind of stand out on the speed figure. So I'm going to take a shot in the dark with her just because I think something crazy is going to happen in this race. And I don't see why it couldn't be her.
Well, I mean, crazy is Kentucky Downs, right? My opinion, Julian Upperoo going 6.5. Just not a fan, Craig. I want to ask you a question about County Final of 3. So we get Steve Asmussen, Joel Rosario, second off the layoff, lost by a head last time out, goes 7, cuts back to 6.5. I mean, 8-1 on Joel and Steve. Greg, that's value, right?
Yeah, that horse could offer some value as well. Personally, I think there's going to be a lot of value in here because, like I said, I don't particularly care for the 2 favorites.
Right.
And that's going to leave it wide open. And this is exactly the kind of race where I'm going to try to hit exactas and hit trifectas and not use the favorites at all because when they don't come in, they pay. And if they do, for me, that's the joy of vertical bets. I don't know if that's how contests work, where, you go for a price. If you lose, you turn the page, where,
Right.
there's 4 more races coming or however many there are in a sequence. But if you play a horizontal bet and you're wrong once, you're out. So I don't have the mental makeup for that kind of thing. That's why I'm more a vertical guy. I like the quick satisfaction of knowing if I'm right or wrong. If I'm wrong, I have no problem turning the page and moving to the next race. So do you find contests are similar? Do you have to have that, okay, it's over, history done with, I'm moving on kind of mentality?
I mean, it's hard, Craig. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I was at the NAC obviously, and I mean, I had a few races where it was heartbreaking, honestly, and I just tried to move on. And I had my buddy John Hurd with me, and we worked together and just tried to say, hey, let's move on to the next. Let's move on to the next. I can tell you this. Betting through the window is a lot easier than playing tournaments.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And that's part of why I personally haven't gotten involved in tournaments because it looks to me like it just would take a whole lot more work because you not only have to handicap horses, you got to handicap the other players in the field and what you think they're going to do. Is that part of what you do and why you've had some success?
Yeah, yes, sir. I mean, you got to play poker. I mean, that's all there is to it. I mean, and especially in Saturday when I was chasing because I didn't do well Friday, I'm trying to play horses I don't necessarily like because I'm trying to catch up to make it to the final day for my, third straight year. So it's extremely difficult. And when you're playing through the window, you control your own destiny. And that's not the way with tournaments.
Yeah, and you definitely don't have to play horses you don't like when you're playing through the windows. So,
Correct. Yeah.
All right, Bobby. Well, thanks. I appreciate all your insights that you had. We'll just do a quick recap before we close it down for the day. We started out with the Grade 3 FanDuel Turf Sprint. You landed on Imprimis.
Yep.
Expressed a little love for Irad Ortiz, some much well-deserved love. I like him as well and went with Fast Boat. Anything you wanted to add on that one?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I'm going to bet heavy on the 12 in race 8 for sure.
And then the ninth, I wound up on Imperador, just looking at a value play. I think you like Channel Cat as your main selection. I certainly think he's got a good shot. You tried to assign me Arklow as my top pick, but I quickly fended that off because I want no parts of Arklow here. It won't shock me if he won, but that's part of racing, right? It's all about value more than just who you think's going to win.
Yes, 100%. I love your creativity here. I don't think the horse is without a chance, and I love 15-1.
Yeah, the 15 to ones are always nice when they come in.
Yes, sir.
And the final race we talked about was the Grade 2 Fasictis Simpson. I don't remember, or Franklin Simpson. I don't remember if I mentioned the name of that. They get confusing with these sponsor names. But we went back to a 6.5 furlong sprint. You again landed on a seemingly big value play and into the sunrise, 12-1. Wesley Ward and Irad from the inside. You think Irad will take them to the front? I'm not so sure about that, but I'm also not sure it matters. I have no problem with that play whatsoever. I landed on Miss Amulet, hoping she's going to run back to that American form she showed at Keeneland when she was third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies race behind Aunt Pearl, who's kind of vanished after a disappointing return, if I remember right. But she was certainly very, very good as a 2-year-old, so no disgrace there. Hasn't done much running at all in Europe, but I'm just looking for her to rebound here. So
Yeah, I totally respect that for sure, Craig.
So that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the TimeformUS Forecast. I want to thank my guest, Bobby Shoemaker, again for filling in very admirably for David Aragona. I'm not sure what we're going to do as far as next week goes. I'm sure we will have a TimeformUS Forecast. As I mentioned on this show, the racing is a little bit light this week, so we may pass on the pace cast, but I will discuss it with David and we'll talk it over before, and post on Twitter what we're going to do. Before we head out, Bobby, let the people who are listening know how they can find you on social media.
Yes, sir. At Two Turn Turf Races, if you're interested. So, and Craig, once again, thank you for the opportunity. I look up to you and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And for just to be clear, the 2 is actually the number 2, if memory serves, right?
Yeah.
All right. You have a great day, Bobby. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And we'll be back next week with 1 or 2 shows, and we'll talk then. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Take care.